Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Mike Perrine. This is the Everyday Detox podcast. And on this episode, I'm starting in the car because every time I go up into my studio, I do this one practice. I do it on the way in. I do it sometimes in the middle of the day, and I do it on the way out. And I also do it at home. And this is one of the self-care practices that has been so incredibly valuable to me. And I have a client coming actually in like 3 minutes. So I'm going to try to pull this off really quickly. But for everyone watching on YouTube, you'll get the full experience. Everyone else, you're just going to have to listen to what I'm saying. But basically what I do is I walk across the street and there's a beautiful playground right across from my studio. And it's usually always empty. And I walk over and I find a bar, like one of the monkey bars, something that you would do a chin up or a pull up off of. And I just simply hang from it. And what this has done is it's not only stretched my back and my lats and my arms and all these things. I use it as a stretching technique after I work out as well. But this has essentially eliminated my need for a chiropractor. So I get a lot of tension headaches and I get a lot of spinal misalignment. And, I've been to a lot of body workers over the years and I've had like really intense headaches over the years that can take me out for a day or two. And a lot of it is stress, a lot of it is my thought patterns, but it translates over into my body because as we know, the body keeps score. And when I started hanging, I was originally doing it to strengthen my grip strength and start prepping to get better at chin-ups and pull-ups. So I started hanging and I realized while I was hanging that there was this deep stretch happening, and when my hips would start to drop and all the gravity came off of my body, there was this deep stretch in my lower back and there was a lot of pain, but in a good way. And I would feel my spine just open up, like pop, pop, pop. And I noticed that all of this traction was happening and all of this decompression was happening. I see my client, he just pulled up, so I should probably get this going. So I'm just gonna show everyone what I mean, because this is essentially free. And it's so good. It's so good for the strength. It's so good for the stretch, but it's really good at just taking the pressure off of the back. And it's helped me tremendously. I've lowered the incidence of those headaches by like 90%. And it's basically eliminated my need for a chiropractor. Although I'd love to go back every once in a while. I have a great chiropractor here in Ashland, but saved me a lot of money. Okay, and I'm upstairs at the studio now, ready to start this podcast for like the third or fourth time. And I originally started filming this podcast weeks ago, and it has been sabotaged and interrupted multiple times. I've recorded this about 20 to 35 minutes in, only to find out that my microphone wasn't working. And then I did that again because I thought it was a quick fix, and then that didn't work. But I recorded for a shorter amount of time. And then I had some sick children at home and I had to leave the office early. So that stopped this process. So I'm going to take the positive outlook on this, and I'm going to say maybe there's something that somebody needed to hear that I did not say in any of those other episodes that I'm going to say today. And maybe that person is you. And you're going to hear those right words, and that's the reason all of this happened. Before we get into this episode, I just wanted to say that Black Friday, Cyber Monday, all of that just passed. And I realized that a lot of people that watch or listen to the podcast, either on YouTube or the podcast apps, they don't look at social media. At least that's the sense I get from some of the YouTube comments and things. There are people that are surprised about things that are going on that I mention that I've been talking about for months on social media. And I go, oh, they're not looking at all the same things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend the Black Friday, Cyber Monday sales at Everyday Detox Academy. So down in the description, I'm going to put a code. It's going to allow you then to reduce all of those prices back to the sale price. But I'm only going to do it for, and I know people listen to this, incrementally. They don't listen to it the day that the podcast launches. So I'm going to do this for 7 days from when this podcast posts. And then those codes are not going to be active anymore. But anyway, hopefully that helps someone that is interested in enrolling in one of our master classes at Everyday Detox Academy, and you didn't know about the Black Friday, Cyber Monday deals that I was offering. It's the one time of year that we offer any discount on those courses. So this podcast is about some of the self-care practices that I have and some really essential things that I do to take care of myself that are simple. Many of them are free, and they're things that I've had to implement to make my life work the way that it works now. I thought when I moved from New York to Oregon that my life was going to get simpler and easier, and in some ways it did, but I'm more busy now than I've ever been, even as busy as running the biggest detox studio in New York City, which is what we were before the pandemic. And I used to work 16-hour days, and then I would commute on top of that and all the things. And I got a lot of burnout from that. But here, with children and running an office, my studio that I'm sitting in now, if you're watching on YouTube, and also running an online academy and doing all the things we do, I'm working just as much. But with the children, there's no wiggle room. So there's no like, well, okay, I'll take half a day here and I'm just going to I'll get an extra couple hours of sleep, or I'll do this or that. I can't even adapt that way because I don't really have the freedom of my own time. So there's certain things that I put into place that have been so valuable to me. And I think they'll be valuable to you too. I'm really glad that I remembered to show you that practice of gripping a bar and just simply hanging and allowing the gravity to come off of my body, off of my legs, and allowing my hips just to swing and to be free and to take all the pressure off of my feet. And what that has done for me, the amount of money it saved me on going to Body Workers, the amount of pain it saved me in regards to headaches and the back pain that I would get. And I still get a little bit, full disclaimer, I'm still a stressed out person that tries to solve all of his problems as he's falling asleep at night and then wakes up feeling like he ran a marathon because of the things racing through his brain and being all twisted. And this has helped me tremendously, that practice. So I'm glad I started with that one because, again, that one is free. And it's going to improve strength. It's going to allow deep stretches, and it's going to allow the spine just to relax for a moment and allow everything to align, if possible, without manipulation. Okay, let's get into it. Now, look, I wish I were going to start this podcast saying, these are my self-care rituals. Upon rising, I step onto the earth with bare feet and I stare off into the sun and get in alignment with the sun. And then I make my way over to my infrared sauna and I do a 60-minute sweat session and I replenish with green juice and lemon water. And then I get into my cold plunge where I exit and I lay on the earth and I do a 3-round Wim Hof breathing process. That's not my life. That will be my life one day when I retire and I have time and I have all of those things at my disposal again. Since moving, I don't have my office in New York anymore, obviously, so I don't have the infrared sauna and all those things. But there are simpler things that do not require a tremendous amount of time, and many of them are free. So this first one is not free, but this is the first thing that I started doing that I've been doing probably 5 to 7 days a week for the last 30 years. And of course, there's been times where I've only done it 3 times a week because of, time and necessity and things like that. And there's been years where, especially when we worked in certain locations that made this easier, where I've done it 7 days a week for years at a time. And that is raw vegetable juicing. If there was any health practice or food that I would recommend to anyone that they should be doing consistently on a daily basis, that would be it over everything. I talked to my teacher and friend, Gil Jacobs masterclass on deep tissue cleansing at the Academy. We were talking about this not too long ago, and he said, if you could only have one thing, just one thing, he goes, it would be raw vegetable juicing. Raw vegetable juice, it's not just about nutrition. So yes, we are concentrating all that nutrition down because when we juice, we're extracting all of the liquid, all of the minerals, all the vitamins, all the antioxidants, or a majority of them anyway, and we're consuming more of those beneficial plant nutrients and a lot of the healing compounds in the plants that then we would be able to eat, right? So you're not going to eat like, a 5-pound bag of carrots and 2 bunches of kale and a couple of apples. Like that's just insane, right? But you juice it down, it's 99.9% liquid. You uptake without any effort, right? We all know what a Thanksgiving meal is like, right? People falling asleep in front, it's 4 o'clock and they just had this huge meal and they're falling asleep watching football. They can't even keep their eyes open with this big full belly of complicated food. And it's creating intense digestive demand, right? Tons of digestive secretions and enzymes. Your body has to resurrect all that food. Your body has to put energy into it just to process it, A, as waste, because a lot of that food is waste and excess, but B, to even get any nutrition from it. When we juice, everything is instant, goes right up into the body. You don't have to exert any energy. There's no cost to doing it. Juice also has a lot of alkaline minerals, and that buffers acidity. So if we're stressed, we live in a polluted environment, we're eating a diet that may be highly acidic and less alkaline, or if we used to do that and now we're just getting into eating clean and our body's going to be releasing a lot of acidic endogenous waste, that juice will help to buffer it. So that's going to keep minerals in our bones, minerals in our teeth, and it's going to tilt our chemistry more towards an alkaline side. And really quick, I'm going to go off in a little direction on this one just because it's important to note. We operate at a very specific pH in our blood. There's different pHs all throughout the body, throughout the intestinal tract, there's different pHs required for metabolic functions to happen. And a lot of people think when you drink that Kangen water, ionized water, or if you drink raw juice or eat an alkaline diet, that you're alkaline. And that's not the case. What's actually happening in that situation is when we're taking in high levels of alkalinity, we are buffering acids in the system. So when we have too much acid in the blood, either from stress or from eating an overly acidic diet, yes, the body's always adjusting its pH again. But what's happening is it's doing it at the cost of stored minerals in our bones and tissue. So if we eat an overly acidic diet, let's say, the body's got to buffer that acid. Because if it goes too far, and if you're too alkaline or too acidic, we can die. And you get into medical trouble there. So the body suddenly says, okay, well, we have to buffer this. We have to adjust what's happening here. And it'll pull bones out of it'll pull minerals out of the bones and tissue, and that's at a cost to our body. So we want to stop that process happening. We want to have an abundance of. It's like taking the antidote before. It's like taking the antidote before the poison, in a sense, right? So we want to have that abundance of alkalinity in case we get stressed out or we eat something that's a little acidic or whatever, where our body has enough room to buffer it, where we're not robbing our chemistry of that, right? So I just wanted to clarify that, because there are people that believe that like we live in a more alkaline state. Now, there is a way to make you alkaline, and that is doing rounds of Wim Hof breathing. And when we do rounds of Wim Hof breathing and we're purging so much carbon dioxide, which is called carbonic acid gas, we're purging the acid out, we can create a level of alkalinity for a moment just for the few moments that you're purging and then holding your breath. And that's a really beautiful process, because then you're in this highly oxygenated environment and you build up this bank of oxygen and alkalinity where you don't need to breathe, and you can just hold your breath for a few moments. And when I do it, I feel waves through my body, like really wonderful waves through my nervous system, completely at peace, completely satiated by the oxygen, not needing anything, not needing food, not needing stimulation, nothing. All right, I've gone way off in a couple of directions with this, but raw juices deliver nutrition, they buffer acidity, and one of the things that raw juicing does is it stimulates elimination. So a lot of people think, oh, you need to take fiber to move things, and we see this in the holistic health world where people are selling acacia fiber and psyllium fiber and apple fiber and pectins, and like they're selling all this stuff to a community of people that started off on a standard American diet, which almost lacks fiber completely in many regards, unless somebody has an occasional apple or something. But all that white flour, fiberless essentially. All the animal food and dairy products and eggs and all that, fiberless. So all that stuff needs help. Now, we get that from eating a plant-based diet. So immediately, people tend to think, well, I need to get fiber in my diet. I should take Metamucil or this acacia fiber, all these different things. But in reality, we should be getting that from our food. And raw juicing, however, because of the enzymes, because of the minerals, when we drink, especially a dense juice like carrot, apple, beet, kale, something like that, that stimulates the bowels like nobody's business. And juice actually does contain some soluble fiber. If you've ever juiced parsley, and then you leave it in the glass for, a couple of minutes and you come back, you notice there's a shelf of it almost looks like gelatin, of a green gelatin. That's pectin in parsley. So there are soluble fibers that escape through the juicing process and will help your body absorb waste and mobilize waste out. But really, it's just the presence of this hydrated juice with alkaline minerals and that enzyme activity that stimulates the body to go. And if you juice things like spinach and beets, there's some oxalic acid in there that also stimulates the intestines. So it's wonderful for elimination. I mean, if you look at the... let me grab this over here for everybody watching on YouTube. I have a printed version of the Vitality Broom Cleanse. This is actually just one page from the Vitality Broom Cleanse. Vitality Broom Cleanse, anybody, you can go down into the description and you can download it. And it talks about the importance of using juicing as well as fruits and smoothies and salads for the preparation of getting a treatment, of getting a colonic. But really for the preparation of any bowel movement, you want to be juicing every day. So concentrated nutrition, rich in enzymes, highly cleansing, encourages elimination, buffers acid. So that's like one of the things that really, really, really has helped me for decades now. It's been almost 30 years that I've been raw juicing. And I watched Jay Kordich, the juice man. I didn't know which one to get. And Jay Kordich, the juice man, if anybody remembers, he was on late, he would do the infomercial. They would do like 2 to 4 late at night, where I don't even remember what channel or what it was. Tony Robbins used to pick those spots, the juice man, and then all sorts of like little home products and stuff, right? Infomercials. So Jay Kordich would come out and he had his big like caterpillar eyebrows and he would get all excited about putting, he had this little audience in front of him and he'd be putting all these vegetables into the juicer and he was just super pumped and super excited. And I thought, well, okay, they sell this one at Macy's in the mall in Staten Island, and that's where I lived. I was 19 years old. And I thought, well, he's going to give me 30 minutes of a free demo and sales pitch. I'll buy his juicer. And that was the first one that I bought. And, it was great and it did its job. And of course, there's more evolved juicers now. I love Omega juicers. There's the Twin Gears. There's the Nama Well, which I've not used yet, but people tell me it's incredible and it makes it just super easy, where you put everything in the top and then you just shut it and turn it on and it just juices it while you look at Instagram. So, raw juicing is the first thing. The next thing that I've been doing for a really long time, but I used to do wrong, quote unquote wrong, is intermittent fasting. So when we're intermittent fasting, a number of things happen. And this could look, the amount of time that you fast with an intermittent fast. And by the way, it never had a name, intermittent fasting. That was never a thing. It was just that we used to skip breakfast. We used to eat late in the day. Intermittent fasting came around, like, I guess I first heard it like 5 years ago or something like that. And it was part of like the biohacking lingo. Everything had a name. Everybody was jumping in ice baths and taking all these nutraceuticals and nootropics and suddenly the world of wellness just got really weird and really cool, by the way, because people were doing things that they had never done before. Like everyone's jumping in ice baths all of a sudden. Great for everyone. But 15 years earlier, you try to express the value of that to people, you'd have much less people jumping on board with things like that. So people were a little more committed and extreme over the past 5 years. And intermittent fasting was one of the things that everybody was doing to hack their biology. But a number of things happen with intermittent fasting, and the amount of time that somebody fasts varies. So it depends on where you're at. It depends on if you're male or female and what's happening. There's a great book called Fast Like a Girl by Dr. Mindy Pelz, and she has a tremendous YouTube channel, and I've learned so much from her. And of course, I've learned a lot from Dr. Fred Bitchy, who's an expert in fasting as well, and he's my teacher and mentor, and I'm sure you've seen him on this podcast, and we'll soon have him at the Academy. I think I'll have him teach a master class on fasting. But in the meantime, Dr. Mindy Pelz does a tremendous job, and she does have a book called Fast Like a Girl that does outline some of the differences between men and women in fasting. But for the most part, let me just give you the general idea of how I intermittent fast. It varies for people. It can be 12 to 20 hours for the most part. Some people only eat once a day, and it'd be almost a 24, I guess it would be a 23-hour fast, and then they would eat for an hour. That's very valuable too. And starting at about, I don't recall all the times now, but at a certain point, human growth hormone boosts up. At a certain point, testosterone elevates. And then at the 17th hour, autophagy starts. And that's when the body starts to recognize cells that are poisoned, cells with damaged DNA, and it starts to destroy them. And it starts to basically, eliminate them from the body. And that's where the most valuable benefits of fasting come in, because we're walking around in this polluted environment with polluted thoughts, sometimes creating physical repercussions in the body, actual chemical pollutants in the air and in the water and in the food and all these places, and it damages the DNA in our body. And what we want is we want the body to have its moment to clean house, to recognize that damaged DNA and not to replicate it. So fasting is a very, very powerful tool at cancer prevention. I just had a client that came in, and he was experiencing throat cancer, and he is now eating a cleaner diet, and he is doing intermittent fasting, and he's doing 2 days of complete fasting a week, water fasting. And I think that's very wise for him to do. So when I used to intermittent fast originally, and I intermittent fast about 17 to 20 hours a day. I've always done that, but I used to do it wrong. So what do I mean by wrong? I mean that back in New York, because I live in Oregon now, New York I've talked to Gil about this. Gil was just mentioning this in his masterclass, actually, where he talks about New York being sort of a time warp, where I could get to the office at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., you just blink your eyes, especially when you're doing colonics, because everything is time-based, and the next person's here, the next person's there, and this person needs something, and it just moves things really quickly. I used to say, I wish I could do colonics on an airplane, because I could fly to Australia. The whole trip would fly by, because you're always battling time. You're trying to give everybody all the time they need on the table. You're trying to speak to people properly, and you're trying to get the next client in the door, and it just burns, right? And there's never really a calm moment. And some other things that come from my conversations with Gil, we were talking about that, how he's a big believer that you should eat in a calm space. And a lot of the time during the day in New York, there's no calm space. I'm amazed that people sit in these outdoor cafes and with cars honking and everybody walking and the restaurant busy, and they just sit there and eat a meal. It's just the last place I would want to eat anything. So what we would do, and I say we, I mean myself, Gil, all of our colleagues at work, and it seems like everybody else we ever worked with too, everyone else, our clients, everyone, we would basically not eat breakfast. We would have juice for lunch, maybe a couple of pieces of fruit, and then around between 7:30 to 9:30, we would go out to dinner, or we would finally get home and make dinner. And then the next day, we wouldn't eat anything until 1, 2, 3 o'clock. Sometimes 5 o'clock, I would have my first juice. And so, yeah, technically I was fasting 17, 18, 20 hours. But Dr. Bishy said to me, who was in a little more control of his time, he was working at his home office. He's always been older than me, right? He's 95 now, but in those days he was in his 60s and 70s. And he would always say, hey, you're technically fasting. He said, but all you're doing is cleaning up the mess from the night before. Well, what do you mean? Well, when you're eating late at night, the sun is down, your circadian rhythm is telling your body it's not time to digest food anymore. Yet you've put a whole bunch of food in, everything is slower. Now you have food spoiling and decomposing in your intestines. Your body still does work overnight, without a doubt. The cleaner you eat, the better. Right? It's better, like if you're eating pizza at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's a big difference between I eat my salad at 9:30. However, when you have a clean chemistry and you're in the cleansing life, you will really start to feel that. And you'll wake up in the morning and it'll be 11 and you'll be at the office and you'll drink some water and you'll burp and you'll go, oh my God, I finished eating last night at 9:30. That's like 12, 13 hours ago. And I'm burping up and smelling the food that I ate. It's not moving as quickly, right? It's sitting there and it's auto-intoxicating the system. And you're interrupting that sleep cycle. And that sleep cycle is so important. I'm going to talk about the importance of sleep again in a moment. But when you interrupt that sleep cycle, you're not cleansing, you're not rejuvenating. And I would know it because I would wake up and I would have like a little bit of like big like puffy eyes and a congested nose. And, you might feel what we call in the business, which Gil coined, pumpkin head, where you feel you might have a headache or feel like heavy in the head. And then get to the office and then drink a whole bunch of water or like have a bunch of juice and then eliminate, take a big dump or you have a great colonic or whatever it was happening for you that day for elimination. And all of a sudden it all drains and drops and you go, oh, I feel amazing again. And then you start feeling the high of living a clean lifestyle. But really all I was doing, and all anybody does when they eat late at night, is they auto-intoxicate on some level, and then they wake up the next day and they fast all day just to clean up the mess from what you did the night before. And I really started to understand that. And I was doing a mini water fast, inspired by Dr. Mindy Pelz, I think. I think she was doing a challenge on YouTube. I happened to see the video. I was like, I'm going to fast today. And I did like a 40-hour fast, just like skipped a day, And as I was breaking it, I was hungry, and it was earlier in the day. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to have dinner now. And it was like 3 o'clock. Finished at 4. Went to sleep. Woke up feeling better than ever. Next day, guess what happened? Started craving food a lot earlier. Changed the cycle. Now my sleep cycles are so much better. And then the data started coming out. Now in the age of social media, like you get things a lot faster. And Dr. Michael Greger released a bunch of data and did a quick video summary. Dr. Michael Greger from nutritionfacts.org, great source of information, has some amazing books. One is called How Not to Die, just talks about all the data that points toward a plant-based diet in regards to disease prevention. But he came up with a video, I saw it on social media, and they were talking about the importance of skipping dinner instead of skipping breakfast on an intermittent fast. You get much more value when you skip dinner, meaning you create more space. You're eating, we're eating when the sun is still up and the body's processing that food, and you're going to sleep empty. The food has been digested, at least 90% or more. The food is exactly where it needs to be in the body, in the gut. Then you wake up in the morning, you drink some water, you don't eat it. Nobody eats coming out of bed, or they shouldn't be. When I say they shouldn't be, I mean someone that doesn't have some issue, like where they need blood sugar stabilization or something. But I mean, the average person should not be waking up and needing to eat food. Wait a couple of hours, hydrate, drink some water. You'll have a stellar elimination, and you'll just feel great all day. And you won't be dealing with whatever you did the night before, the day before. Most people, I'm not a stimulant person too, so I really started to feel this. I'll never go back, by the way. I don't eat past 4:30, and sometimes does it like get a little blurry, the lines, and the kids distract me and I finish eating at 5, like yes. I aim to start eating at 3. Does a client run late and I don't get to eat until 3:45, 4, and then it pushes back a little bit? That happens too. But I would say 95% of the time I don't eat past 4:30. And I'll never go back. It feels so incredibly good. And the reason I feel it so much is not only because I live a clean life, but I'm not a stimulant person. I don't drink coffee. I don't drink matcha. I do eat some raw cacao sometimes, but that's not like a regular thing or a weekly thing or anything like that. So I don't do it enough to correct bad decisions. And one of the biggest issue I have with stimulant culture is that it's not something people do sometimes. right? It's not like, oh, once a week we go out for a special night and I have a coffee or something or what. No, people do it every day. And when they do it every day, they are shutting off the communication from their body that whatever they ate the day before or whatever their phone habits were the night before or whatever they binge watched on Netflix the night before, whatever happened to disrupt their sleep where they got very little of it or low quality of it, they've now shut down that communication that you're exhausted, and it makes everything okay again. And I had mentioned the reason I hang at the playground and on the Olympic rings at my house is that I'll get these really intense headaches. Now, there's one thing that can help remove a headache, especially when you don't use it, and that's caffeine. So every once in a while, if it gets really bad, to not take medication, let's say I have to come into the office and I have to perform, I'll drink a matcha, like a green tea, loaded with antioxidants, but also loaded with caffeine, just as much as a coffee. And I know, like the first time I did it, I said, well, this is a good compromise. Let me see, because my head was killing me. And this is why they pair it with different medications. You'll find caffeine in different painkillers. But I just did the caffeine. I thought, let me drink a green tea, a matcha, and I just shot the thing down. Just hot water in those vibrant green powdered leaves. I stirred it up. I drank it down. Man, that stuff hit. And I went, oh boy, I know why people drink coffee and drink stimulants all the time, because I hadn't had it for like 25 years. And then I was kind of like at my wit's end with it. I was like, oh, this is so painful. I remember this one headache. I was like, let me try it. And I've done it a few times since. And it's great drugless pain relief, by the way. I don't know if it will work as well if somebody actually drinks stimulants every day. Months and months, 6 months will go by between the times that I do it. So it doesn't ever build up in my system, or maybe 3 months if I'm having a bad time. But, so I know what that feels like, and it shuts down communication. Like if you're not thinking straight and you're exhausted and you have a headache and it's all because of the way you're living your life, and you shut that down every day, and some people do it twice a day. Like if you need that to get through your life, you are overriding direct communication that your diet and lifestyle is killing you. Slowly, but it's killing you. And when you shut that down repetitively, it lets you go 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And then one day you wake up because you have some terrible, health issue going on, and your body had been screaming at you every day. And you basically put, a piece of duct tape over its mouth. And he said, no, shut up. We're going to do some coffee right now. Plus a lot of those coffees and all that stuff is just loaded with sugar and creamy sweet things and all that stuff. It's just dessert at this point. On Instagram, they do a lot of videos where they show you how much sugar is in some of these like Dunkin' Donuts, pumpkin spice, latte things and all that. It's absurd how much white sugar plus the caffeine. It's unreal. And coffee is the most sprayed crop in the world. So if anyone's drinking coffee, make sure you're doing it organically. So let's move over to the next one. And the next one is sleep. I've been abusive of my sleep cycles over the years. So, now I guess it's my age. And also I told you I don't have a lot of wiggle room. So, I have a toddler jumping on me. It could be as early, usually it's about 5:20 in the morning. Sometimes he'll sleep till like almost 7, which is amazing. But, my alarm clock is not negotiable. It just goes off. And that's it. So the only way for me to get more sleep is to go to sleep earlier. And over the years, I mentioned, running Vitality, opening that studio. God, I used to basically get up for work at like, 6 or 7, get ready, get to the office by 8, go from 8 to like 8, 9, whatever. Sometimes we'd podcast till like midnight by the time it's wrapped up. And then my girlfriend and then fiance and then wife, Holly would be home and she'd be in Oregon and I'd be in New York before I moved here. Or if I were on a trip to New York and she'd be like, well, you got to FaceTime me. So then I'd FaceTime till 2 a.m. Then I'd fall asleep. And I wake up at 6 or 7 or something like that. And if you're not sleeping, you're not cleansing. When I was younger, I didn't feel it as much. And it didn't mean it wasn't doing damage to my body. It just meant that I was able to recover from it a little more quickly. But as I got older and as I have a non-negotiable alarm clock, I realized how much I had to prioritize that. I was getting injured more working out, and I just through careful observation, being now in Oregon and knowing, all right, you're waking up at 5:20 tomorrow. When I push whatever I think I'm gaining by staying up till midnight, by working on podcasts or doing stuff for the office or like whatever it is, and I think I'm getting some type of efficiency or something, I'll just put in a late night tonight. I'll work till 1 or midnight or something like that. I lose in effectiveness the next day. Absolutely. So whatever 2-3 extra hours at the end of the night I think I'm doing, now I get brutally honest with myself. Save it till tomorrow. Get the sleep. Even if the kids might wake you up in the middle of the night or whatever, make sure that you can get 8 hours sleep if you, well, actually, I never sleep 8 hours, but I set myself up for 8 hours. I get 6.5 to 7 hours. And let me tell you, my life has changed. Joe Rogan just had the sleep expert guy on who wrote the book. So I'm not going to go into all the details about the value of sleep. But I am going to just say that since I started sleeping, I've become so much more productive and effective. I would literally lose days. Stay up, gain 3 hours, do a bunch of junk on the computer. Next day, brain is dog shit. Can't do a podcast like this. Can't think. Just forgetting to call people back. Schedule, like whatever efficiency I think I gained, I lose in effectiveness the next day. So moving on, because every one of these things affects the other. So exercise was a big one, and sleep was huge in that, because the amount of days that I would wake up feeling achy, or my neck was out, or I didn't sleep good, or I'm tired, or now I'm a little headachy because I didn't listen to myself and I stared at a screen too late at night, that would then not only take out my effectiveness the next day, but it would eliminate my ability to properly exercise. When you're not rested and you try to put your body in a stressful situation, a positive stressful situation like exercise, you're more inclined to get injured, and it doesn't feel as good. It's so much harder to get motivated. When I wake up and I feel amazing, I'm ready to go. I did a couple of podcasts ago called, I think it was the most influential people in my life, and it was Malcolm X and John Robbins and Dr. Fred Bishy and Gil Jacobs, and I talked about them and my relationship to them. But there was one person there's a couple of people I would give like a little notable mention to. One was Leslie McKieran, who owned Angelica Kitchen. She played a tremendous role in my life, even though, she's been on this podcast. You can go back. Was it number 7? Might've been podcast number 7. I could be way off on that. It could have been number 17. I don't know. I feel like it was number 7 though. I might be wrong, but anyway, you can check. She was a tremendous influence on me. She's been on this podcast. And another one is a guy named Mike Chang. And Mike Chang was a YouTuber that was part of, in the early YouTube days, I used to see him around a lot. And this is not when he was an influence to me. I just saw him because it was the early days of YouTube. And, that whatever they were doing there was one of like the biggest brands or channels or whatever on YouTube. And that was 6-pack shortcuts or shortcut to 6-pack abs, or I don't remember exactly what it was. But he used to do that kind of stuff. And he was this very fit guy that used to do all these videos on YouTube that were about six packs. So I remembered him from that. And then about a year ago, maybe less, I was going through Instagram. I see this guy, and he's doing this routine called flow training. And it's about what to do when you don't have a lot of time. And just looking at it, I was like, I need that. And I automatically liked the guy. And I saw that he had a young child like I did. And he was talking about breath work and relaxation and openness and flow of the body. And I was like, oh, this guy seems really cool. And it turns out it's Mike Chang. And he left all that 6-pack shortcut stuff. And he matured into a father who is really about the longevity of his body and about the relationship between the mind and the body. And he's into opening up the spine and tapping and all this stuff. And he changed my life because for me, with my relationship to exercise, because I worked a lot, because I didn't sleep a lot, I would always also overthink it. So I'd be like, oh shit, okay, I don't have 45 to an hour now to go do a warm up, do my 3 sets of this, 3 sets of that. Like, it was just like, I can't get it. Like, it was just like this big thing in my head. So I was like, okay, if I can only really do this 1 or 2 times a week. And by watching him do those flow trainings, and he does 60-minute ones, he does 1-minute ones, and he does like 5-minute ones, and probably everything in between, because you can fit in a lot of different things. I told myself, I said, I'm going to take 5 minutes a day to exercise instead of trying to make it this big thing and then failing on it because, I lost the 45 to an hour that I needed for that. Like, no. 5 minutes. And I would do Mike Chang's flow thing. And then what I realized by doing the 5 minutes is that, and I would set a timer on my phone. I'd be like, look, I got 20 minutes before the next client shows up. Timer, go. This is your time. And I would start his flow training thing. And what I found that it was the most incredible warm up. And then I would set my alarm, I'd like hit it again, do another 5 minutes. And then I would do like 3 sets of push-ups, 3 sets of squats, really simple, easy things. And in 10 minutes, it was incredible with how much I could accomplish. And then now I do about 15 minutes. It usually goes to 30. And it's interesting how when we think we don't have time and we just simply begin and we set a timer, how we actually have the time. And I would think about it and I would realize, I would realize that like, just if I hit traffic on the way home or whatever, like, did that 15 minutes like just knock the whole day over? No. There's always an extra 5, 10, 15 minutes. Things happen. If I get stuck on a line at the store and the person's card doesn't work or whatever, and now I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, geez, did that destroy my entire day? No. So if those unexpected, annoying things are not going to destroy the efficiency of your entire schedule, then actually scheduling things that are going to make you better there for smaller increments are only going to make you better. It was Ty Lopez. I don't know if you guys remember him. He was the guy that would stand in he'd stand in the garage and he had like a Ferrari and a Lamborghini or something. And he'd be like, just standing here. It was here in my garage with my cars. The thing I like better than cars are books or knowledge or something. I don't know. He was some internet marketer guy, and he still is. He still does some things. Really fascinating dude. A lot of people called him a bullshitter because he claimed to read a book a day. And I don't exactly know how he made all of his money, but he said something once that I saw a clip of, though, that really made a lot of sense to me. And he said, nobody got weaker from doing a push-up. So when I'm sitting there thinking my way out of exercising because I don't have the time, I certainly have the time to do 5 push-ups. If I certainly have the time to do 25 push-ups. I mean, how long does 25 push-ups take? Not too long. It takes less than a minute if you bang them all out at once. If you can't bang them all out at once, probably take you 3 minutes. You want to give little breaks. We don't have 3 minutes in a day. So I started realizing my overthinking. And I started integrating 15-minute increments of exercise a day. Now, not every day's, some days are light duty, right? So some days I'll go real hard. I mean, God, in 15 minutes, you do 5 minutes of Mike Chang flow training, squats. I do the push-ups. If I'm at my house, I'll hit the battle ropes really quick. I'll grab some of my steel clubs or maces. It's amazing how much actually happens. And I'm sweating, and I did it. 15 minutes, maybe I'll push it to 20, whatever it is. I forgot where I was going with that. Oh, not every day is, an intense workout. Some days are light duty. So some days I'll go, I really don't have time today. But before I leave the office, I'm going to do some like 10 minutes of flow training, Mike Chang flow training. And I'm not going to show you guys what that looks like here. People listening wouldn't even get the idea of it. And more people listen than actually watch on YouTube. So, and I'm not going to disgrace Mike Chang by trying to demo his stuff, but check him out on YouTube, on Instagram, and look at some of that. There was one great video. It was like what you can do in 1 minute. And when you do the flow training and the tapping and you just, and the swinging and all the things and the movement, I'm a completely different person after that 1, 2, 3, 4 minutes. totally changes state. This is why people like Tony Robbins do things like that, where they have people jump up and down and do all these things at their seminars, because people are standing there for 14 hours in these incredibly like marathon-like intense days of education, of personal development. And if he just had people sitting in a classroom writing, everyone would be falling asleep and there'd be no energy. So he does all these different exercises to get people to change their state from a state of maybe being bored and tired and dropping down to a state of elevating. And that's what the Mike Chang flow training has done for me. So I hit the timer. I start with that, even if my body doesn't feel like it wants to exercise. And suddenly, with the blood flowing and all these different areas tapped and all these different areas opened, I can't wait to hit the ground and start banging out push-ups. So thank you, Mike Chang, someone that changed my life. Let's move on to another practice that I have. So exercise, obviously free. Sleep, obviously free. Intermittent fasting, obviously free. Juice, well, it's the cost of food, essentially. So it's not like some big expensive thing that you have to do. This next one is essentially free as well. And it gets better if you live in a northern climate, because I've done this in Florida and it was quite underwhelming. But that's cold immersion. And if you've watched my videos on YouTube in the past or seen me on social or any of that stuff, you know that I used to own a cryo sauna that dropped down to negative 256 degrees. I used to do 1 or 2 sessions a day and it was great. I don't have that anymore. But I do live in Southern Oregon, where the late fall all through winter and probably into early spring or late spring even, we get some wicked cold water down from the mountains. And I do a 3-minute cold shower every day with very little exception. If I am extremely late for work, which is almost impossible to be late here, but with the kids, sometimes that happens. I've actually never been late here to the office, but I get here within seconds. If it's one of those days, I might skip the 3 minutes so I'm not late, There's a circumstance in my body where I go, no, I don't need the cold right now. I need expansion and heat, and I want to be with that for the day. But that's 1% of the time, either one of those cases. 99% of the time, I take a nice hot warm shower, I enjoy it, I clean myself, and then at the end, regardless, this is for a mental exercise, but more for a physical exercise, I get into that cold water and I let it run all over my body, my face, my neck, my head, my back. The lower quadrant of the body is a little bit easier, so that's a little bit like cheating. We're just much more insulated on the thighs and the butt. Doesn't feel as intense. But when it's hitting your armpits and the back of your neck and your face, and that water is cold from the mountains, it changes the chemistry. I go deep into this in eliminating the toxic load. I go into how a cryotherapy session can boost norepinephrine, which is a hormone and a neurotransmitter, by 300 to 400%. I don't know what a cold shower does. Probably boost it by 150 to 200%. But there's all this microscience about cold shock proteins, heat shock proteins, collagenase, norepinephrine, right? I'm not going to talk about all that here in the podcast. I talk about that in the masterclass. But that norepinephrine helps regulate the body's response to inflammation. So when another paired tool with hanging from a bar is getting into a cold shower if I'm in pain. And a lot of the times what it will do is it'll shut down pain receptors. It'll drop inflammation, A, by boosting norepinephrine, but B, by drawing everything out. So when we're in the cold, in order to protect the body, especially if we're in extreme cold, like the negative 256, but even if we're in like cold water in a cold shower. And by the way, the negative 256 is a dry treatment. I would argue, because I've been in ice barrels, that an ice bath is more intense than a cryo session in regards to how you experience it. They're both pretty intense. But when you have liquid on your body that's cold, it penetrates the tissue and it's intense. And in a lot of ways, I wonder if it's more effective sometimes. So anyway, 3 minutes in the cold shower, it pulls the blood and all the liquid and the pressure away from the muscles and the joints, and it brings everything to the core. And that's basically like squeezing out a sponge of any inflammation that's in that area. And it shuts the pain receptors down. And that's also been drugless pain relief for me. And that's one of the reasons I used to do cryo sessions, aside from all those the added value of all those benefits, all those biohacking benefits. A lot of the time working so much and being so stressed, I would do 1 or 2 cryo sessions to help sort of just buffer that to a degree. One of the added benefits of cold immersion that I use it for is the detoxification element to it. So this is something that wasn't talked about when I was trained in how to run people through cryo sessions, right? There was all the details about contraindications, how to keep people safe, all these like little technical details, and then how to market it. Market it about the weight loss part of it, because you become more efficient at burning calories, so that they always focused on tell your clients they can lose weight, and tell your clients that they can recover faster if they've, injured themselves exercising, or, it was always focused on like that kind of like marketing thing. And they missed one big thing. And that was the reason that we had it. Because at my studio, our clientele, we did have like a lot of CrossFit people that came in for injury relief. And, we had plenty of people that wanted, because cryotherapy can really help, it can help maintain healthy skin. Any cold immersion can, and the weight loss part of it. So we had that. We had those clients come in, but for the most part, the clients that were coming in to do saunas and colonics and get cryotherapy, they were the people that really understood the value of cellular detoxification, not only for looking good, but because of the disease prevention and the elevating vitality element of that. And one of the things that happens when we get into the cold is, in order to conserve heat, the body will contract every cell in the body. It'll contract vasoconstriction will happen. It'll contract all of the blood vessels, and it will do this to conserve heat, to decrease surface area, so it can conserve heat. And when that happens, it squeezes wastes and gases out of every cell of the body. So how many people have heard, if you go out into the cold or fall into cold water or something, like my dad used to tell me, like, don't go outside with wet hair, you'll catch a cold. And really what's happening there is, when people get a chill, the wind blows down their shirt or something, most people are so swollen with waste, they've created a contraction. That waste squeezes out into the bloodstream, and now they're detoxing, and their pathways start getting clogged as the body tries to take it out. So they start getting the stuffy nose or something like that. And I used to believe that. And that happened to me in the beginning. So I didn't technically get sick, but you can put yourself in a state of detoxification. I remember going to the Russian bathhouse and doing some intense saunas. And the first time I ever did a cold plunge, I had congestion. I had a cold. I was like, I must have got a cold there. And then I realized something. I realized, no, you initiated that process. And the more you do it, the more you'll keep your system clear and clean. And of course, the longer you're into the cleansing life, and the cleaner the diet you eat, and the more sleep you get, and the more hydrated you are and all that stuff, the less likely you're going to have a cleansing response just by getting in the cold. And then I learned that later, that none of that was true, because I was getting in cryo chambers twice a week. I was getting in ice baths. I was taking cold showers. I was cold all the time. And I was never getting sick. Or I was at least, I'd crash my system sometimes from no sleep and stress, and I'd get sick, but I wasn't getting sick from getting cold. And I heard Wim Hof, the grandfather of cold immersion, say something really interesting. And he didn't explain why he said it, but I knew why he said it. And he said, to avoid a cold, you have to get into the cold. So basically, you have to keep that expansion-contraction model happening, so that you can squeeze those wastes out, so they don't accumulate to a point that when you just get the slightest little chill, or the hot water runs out in your shower, you're suddenly sneezing up mucus and coughing the next day. That's just waste trying to come out of the system that got activated and released from that cold immersion. I should have had water before this podcast. My voice is suffering here. Okay, so let's move over to the last one. And the last one is a few vital supplements that I do. Now, these obviously aren't free. And I talk about, if you've heard me in the Q&As, I talk about essential supplements and luxury supplements. And there's a couple of essential supplements that I take that I really feel like keep me on track, especially throughout the winter. One of them, and the primary one, because I will take like a plant-based multi sometimes, and I will take a little extra B12 and stuff. But aside from that, just being smart, in my opinion, for anyone, that's not the one that I really. It's not the one that I really focus on to keep me, to keep my mood straight and my body straight. The one that I really focus on is vitamin D3. And I've taken up to 11,000 IUs a day. Right now I take about 6,000 a day, 5 to 6,000 a day. And I truly believe that, especially, and now, by the way, I have tested myself. I've not taken supplements for years, and then tested myself to see how my diet of plant-based whole foods treated me in regards to nutritional balancing. And the one nutrient, I wasn't even deficient in B12. The body can produce its own B12 if you have a healthy system. I wouldn't rely on that. And the body can store B12 for a long time too. But I wouldn't rely on any of that or any philosophical truths. Just take a little B12, you'll feel better doing it. But the only thing that I was deficient in was vitamin D. And I did the test in New York in February. So I hadn't really seen sunlight on my skin in a proper way since, it was February. So I probably hadn't since like the beginning of October. Okay. And a lot of people suffer from vitamin D deficiency, and it's the reason a lot of people get sick. It's the reason why when that whole situation happened, I'm not going to say the words because I don't want this thing shadow banned or flagged, but when that whole situation happened, that was a contributing factor to the people that didn't do well and had to be hospitalized, and some of them died, is because they were deficient in vitamin D. So vitamin D is very important for a healthy immune system, strong bones, and mood. When I started taking it regularly, I just found that on these dark days of winter, I was in such a better mood. So for the essential supplements, that's the one that I really make sure I focus on. And yes, I do take the multi that covers a lot of things, and I'll do a couple of drops of B12. Now, in regards to the luxury supplements, a lot of those will come and go from my life. Sometimes I'm doing E3 Live or whatever. A lot of this depends on finances. But there's one that I now take without exception. And you know what it is if you got this far in the podcast, because I always talk about it. It's in the show note descriptions, and I've made social media videos about it. And that's Valasta astaxanthin. And if you have not seen that podcast with Sam Shepard that I did, I think it was episode 41. I don't know if could have been 41 or 42. I think it was 41. That podcast goes deep into the why and the value of that supplement. It is the most powerful antioxidant we can take in supplement form. And Valasta is different than the average astaxanthin that you can get at Walmart or that you might see on Amazon or something like that. There's a very specific form. It's the glucosidic form, and Sam figured this out, and he figured it out through his own healing process. And that antioxidant, it's great for skin. It's great for basically neutralizing oxidative damage. And we talked about the value of fasting. When you pair fasting with a high antioxidant diet, you get the added benefit of neutralizing the free radicals that would damage your DNA. So basically, it's preemptive. And then the fasting helps clean up anything that you might have missed. And that's extremely powerful. And Valasta is a luxury supplement, because luxury supplements are things that make you better, but they're not really essential. Like if I never learned about Valasta, I'd still be here talking about this podcast, minus talking about that product. If I never took E3 Live in my life, there's a lot of great nutrition in E3 Live and all these different compounds that boost brain health and all these things. But if I never took it in my whole life, I'd still be here doing the same thing. These things are great supplements to have and to take, but they're luxury supplements. They're not essential to living a long, healthy life, even though they may make you better and aid you in that. And you need to be able to afford them. And Valasta, and E3 Live and all these things, health products can get very pricey sometimes. So they're luxury supplements. If you could afford them, they'll make you better. Take them. If you can't, don't worry about it. Focus on the other elements of the lifestyle. Focus on the fasting and the juicing and the cold immersion, and do some breath work and move your body and all that stuff. And you're still going to get great value. But for me, the luxurious side of me takes for last to astaxanthin. So that and vitamin D3 are some of the real essentials for me. Anyway, guys, I have no idea how this podcast came out. I've been talking for 56 minutes straight. I hope some of these tools will be helpful to you. They're fast. Most of them are free, and they're valuable. Anyway, guys, if you want to support this podcast and you do decide to get some Velocity, you can drop down to the show notes and do that. And remember that code for the Academy is going to be down in the show notes. It'll be good for 7 days from the day that this podcast posts. Just in all fairness, because I know a lot of you don't watch me on social media. And maybe it'll be available longer if I forget. I forget often. So try it out, even if it's not. It might still work. Maybe I forgot. Anyway, guys, this whole podcast was a mouthful. There's so much. I feel like I talked for so long. Talked straight 57 minutes right now, and we're going to stop here. I appreciate you all so much. If you feel inclined, please leave a review of this podcast. Please subscribe. Please like this video if you're watching it. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel, and I'll see you all in the next one.